Hey guys, I know it's been a while, but today I really feel like I need to refocus. So take 10 minutes with me while I try to tell you why I think that DC20 does degrees of success better than D&D 5th edition or Pathfinder 2nd edition. Let's start with the easiest of the systems to explain, which is Dungeons and Dragons. So, in D&D 5th edition, there's really only two degrees of success: pass or fail. There are cases in combat where a natural 1 is a critical failure and it will result in an attack automatically missing. And the converse, a natural 20 on a die roll is a critical in combat and will result in doubling the damage dice. However, outside of combat, critical failures and critical successes don't really come into play unless the DM chooses to homebrew reasons for them to, or subsystems where you might have an effect happening on a critical success or a critical failure. So really, you're looking at a pass-fail system. A lot of people on the Pathfinder side of the fence tout the by 10 system of Pathfinder as an innovation in degrees of success, and I would have to agree that, firstly, even outside of combat, critical failures and critical successes, rolling those natural ones and natural 20s, does impact the game, whether it be attempting to scale a cliff, swim across a river, avoid a trap. You never really want to critically fail any of those things, and a critical success is going to usually give you extra benefits. Where Pathfinder really dials it up too, though, is with a by 10 system where everything has a DC, and if you beat that DC by 10 or more, or if you fail by 10 or more, you also incur a critical success or a critical failure. This opens up the possibility of critical successes happening a lot more often, and critical failures also happening a lot more often. And it also creates situations where maybe you roll a 10 and you're like, I don't know, a 10 is probably a failure, but is it a critical failure? Do I want to spend that hero point to re-roll that and attempt to get higher than a 10? So that's Pathfinder. Now, when we get to DC20, DC20 has a by 5 system. However, it also uses D&D's critical success, critical failure on ones, natural ones, and natural 20s. In fact, in DC20, the only way to actually score a critical success or to end up with a critical failure is by rolling a 1 or a 20. Unlike D&D and borrowing from Pathfinder, there are many times where those critical successes and critical failures will have impacts outside of combat. That could be in skill challenges, it could be in just a skill check, it could be avoiding a trap. In combat, those critical failures also are interesting in that if you score a natural 1 on a attack roll, it leaves you exposed so that the next attack against you has advantage. I think this is a cool mechanic because a lot of people in the past have tried to homebrew like critical failure tables, and they can really compound that fact of not only missing but then also ending up with a broken weapon or some other really negative outcome. I think being exposed, having the next attack against you have advantage, is a clean and interesting way of adding a little bit of nuance to the combat without leaving somebody in a really bad position. On the other end of the spectrum is critical successes. And in DC20, on a critical success in combat, if it was an attack roll, it's going to do extra damage. So DC20 has metrics for success, for failure, for a critical failure, for a critical success. But let's talk about that by 5 system for a moment. So those by 5s don't naturally mean a critical success like in Pathfinder. So you can have a success by 20 and it's still not necessarily a critical success, but you will usually in DC20 get extra benefits for every 5 that you beat a difficulty class by. So let's say that the DC is 10. If you get a 15, you're going to get an extra success, and it's going to usually give you some kind of benefit. If it's a spell, it might be an extra point of damage. If it's a healing spell, it might heal an additional hit point of damage. The main thing that I would say with DC20 and the by 5 system is that it allows for more dynamic outcomes than Dungeons and Dragons basic you pass or you fail, with the possibility of a critical success, critical failure. And it also provides even more dynamic outcomes than Pathfinder's by 10 system, where if you get a critical failure, whether rolling a natural 1 or failing the check by 10 or more, or getting a critical success by getting 10 over the DC or a natural 20. So you've gone from Pathfinder with critical success, success, failure, critical failure, and now you still have those critical failures, critical successes, but every 5 above or below the DC can have variable impacts. So, for example, in a combat skill challenge, maybe every 5 that somebody fails a DC by, they take a point of damage. Or every 5 that they beat the DC by, they gain an extra success point towards winning the challenge. So you can have very variable and different results. So, to summarize why I think DC20 does degrees of success better than D&D or Pathfinder, you have the bottom of the spectrum with a critical failure, which is going to be a natural 1 on the die. And from there, you have failing each 5. So every 5 that somebody fails a DC by, they're going to end up with stacking penalties depending on how bad they roll. But this is giving you a multifaceted failure system of more than even just fail or crit fail, because you have even more degrees in there for every 5. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have success, and then success each 5. So each 5 that somebody succeeds by is going to generate more and more positive effects. And then, of course, capping out with a critical success at rolling a natural 20. However, that's not the end of the story, because in DC20, you have the help action, which adds a D8 to somebody's check, which means if you have multiple people using help actions and or multiple help actions, you can end up rolling a D20 plus multiple D8s, multiple D6s, multiple D4s, and I've seen successes in the 40-50 point range. And when, say, a DC is 15 and somebody rolls a total score of, say, 45, that is beating the DC by 30. And my point is that you're degrees of success are so wide, more than just I score a critical hit on a 10 over. You can have a breadth of possible level of success. And I think that broad scope of not just a critical failure, not just a critical success, but all of those by fives create the best, most dynamic system for handling degrees of success. Because let's face it, in D&D, if you roll that 27 and it's not a 20 on the die, it doesn't matter. In Pathfinder, if you roll that 27, it might be a crit, which is exciting. But in DC20, rolling that 27 is probably going to be at least a brutal hit, if not beyond brutal, and it's going to deal extra damage for every 5 that you beat the DC by, that you beat their physical defense by. So that, to me, is a much more dynamic and it does a much better job of capturing the feel of degrees of success than even Pathfinder's expanded system. And with that, I'm refocused. I need to get back to my day. So if you liked this content, I hope you'll consider subscribing. Click the notification bell so that you know when we put out new content. If you're interested in playing in one of our games, we have several openings on startplaying.games. The link will be in the description. We also have a Patreon. We're currently working on increasing the benefits over there. We're including our homebrew write-ups for spells, subclasses. I'm going to be putting DC20 macros for Roll20 on there. So lots of really cool benefits on that side of things. And then at the highest tier currently, we also offer $5 off of every session that you play with us on startplaying.games. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day and keep rolling with us.